here at Sibos in Toronto 2017, and I'm with Tom Zeeb from Six Security Services. Tom, we've spoken before, and I've got a couple of questions I'd like to ask about things that you said prior to Sibos that are relevant to the discussions this week. The first one relates to AI, which is a big topic at Sibos, and you mentioned that AI and robotics provides an opportunity to look at nearshoring again, or replace nearshoring.
Yes.
Can you just unpack that for me a little bit? How so?
I think what I said was we need to look at these technologies as potential for rethinking how we take cost out of our processes and how we think about leveraging the know-how that we have in our organizations better in the context of providing a better, cheaper, faster service. Nearshoring at the moment always has a difficulty attached to it. You've got to train a group of people again, you've got potentially attrition issues, you've got distance issues, and I believe that the technology that we have today, which is very early on in its development, has the potential to help us enormously and requires us to start thinking about whether nearshoring is the best way forward or whether we implement different technologies in our various process landscapes to achieve what we want to achieve. And it comes back to something else I said in an earlier panel, which was we need to not just look at a process and say, there's a process we've been doing effectively for 30 years. We've made it more complicated over that period of time. We've addressed regulatory issues. We've addressed compliance issues. And we've automated significant parts of it. I think where we're now at is we can start looking at some of this technology and go to the end of the process and assess what deliverable do we want. And based on that deliverable, what's the most appropriate technology to do it? And I think AI and robotics, as well as blockchain, as well as cloud, all of these technologies have the potential to play a role in there. We have to find the right way to put it together.
Now, the other question that comes out of that is, in looking at these processes again and seeing how you can make them more efficient, one thing you've mentioned is taking out duplication. In the process of taking out duplication, inevitably, some people are not going to be doing stuff that they were doing before.
That's correct, yeah.
Who do you expect to be relieved that they're not doing that anymore, and where is the resistance going to come to giving up some of these processes?
I think let's put the context around it first. When I look at what my core platforms as an infrastructure cost, it's a very, very small part of the overall process. And we work together with our clients and with some external partners to look at what is the overall cost in our market, we started fairly small in our market, to the overall value chain in post-trade. And in Switzerland, that number is between 800 million and 1 billion francs per annum in cost.
For the market as a whole?
For the market as a whole. My part of that, on an IT spend side, is about 23 million. On an overall spend is about 60, 70 million. So let's say I take a big chunk of that out. Say I cut it in half. It's still not going to move the dial as regards the billion. And when we started looking at what constitutes that big chunk of costs that the whole industry has, we found very quickly there were huge amounts of duplication in the process. Every booking I do on the Nostro side, and on the Vostro side, we've got 2 bookings, then my client does it again, his client does it again, and finally the end client. So you're touching these transactions at least 6 times, if not 8. That doesn't make any sense. So if we look at it end to end, back to your question now, who is going to be out of a job effectively? I think that requires a lot of very close collaboration with the banks, because it's not necessarily the case that it has to be the infrastructure that provides all these services. But what we do have to do is get to a point where we have agreed with our stakeholders in the client base who takes what role in this process. And there's a number of new technologies that will come out into that as well, whether it's electronic IDs, whether it's cloud solutions. You know, we've got to look at who is going to provide what piece. So it's not as simple as saying the infrastructure is going to do everything and the banks are going to have to let a bunch of people go. I don't think that's the case. I think we have to be very differentiated in looking at selectively which processes are worth still doing and which ones are not worth doing, and then who should do it.
Now, we both took part yesterday in a panel on the future of posttrade, which SIX organised. Just as a matter of interest, was there anything you heard from the other panelists that startled you, or that you came away thinking, gee, I didn't expect that?
No, I think there was an undercurrent in there, and I think the undercurrent was one of a little bit of frustration that we're all talking about what the technology could bring us, what process optimization could bring us. I've yet to see any real implementations that say, this is great, this actually solves a problem that I have. And that's been one of the concerns that certainly the practitioners in the industry have had since the hype about blockchain started about 3 years ago. But it's been going on longer than that. You know, there's always some new idea, and I think we've got to start seeing something actually come back in significant reduced costs or reduced risk or flatter processes, something that gives us an indication that there's actually traction being gotten here. And at the moment, I'm not seeing it.
Are you expecting that to come from the market infrastructures, or who's going to drive that? I mean, I raise that because you've just published, or you commissioned a survey on the future of post-trade, and one of the things I understand that came out of it is that people are generally in the industry looking to market infrastructures for leadership in this, and helping to guide people on what choices to make in terms of technology. Now, that's very different from the way that market infrastructures have traditionally been positioned, which is answerable to their community and utilities. But is there a change? Is it a smooth change from?
Yes and no. I mean, we certainly do not have a monopoly on thinking out of the box. Absolutely not. And I think we have to have a very, very close dialogue, and we have it with our organization, but I'm not sure that every market infrastructure has that, with its key stakeholders to take on those ideas. What the research showed was that the market wants to see real value add coming out of the market infrastructure, rather than just being yet another intermediary that blocks the process. If we take that as a given, then that value add can be defined in a number of different ways. In our case, we are accelerating our activities in terms of providing thought leadership into what new technologies can actually be applied, and what does that mean, and how do we prototype that with our clients. And we're starting to see some success in that. I think part of providing that value is to accelerate that even further and really say we can both test new technologies in a more holistic way, not just within one bank, but for the market. And at the same time, we have the wherewithal to address some of the key challenges for many, many banks, things like cybersecurity, which is very, very expensive. We can invest in it. We have to invest in it. And that's something that we have to be better at showing to our customers so they can leverage that investment better, so they don't have to do it.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.